to the cloud. And, I wanted to just again talk quickly about proximity. And reading obviously John's book that he recommended from last week. He recommended a few, but it's he really talks about events again. And I mean, I said it, I sound like a broken record, but just proximity is power, right? And the amount of power that was in that room last week just by going to that 6 hour event, just having those conversations, I don't think we really realize in the moment how impactful they can be down the road. But it brings a lot of energy back into our lives as well too. We have those high level conversations. We talk about what we're doing in our business. We get inspired by others in the moment. And I swear, I owe all of my, or most of it anyways, small success in this business to getting in those rooms with other people, investing in myself, traveling all over North America for the most part, and just getting in rooms of people that are doing way more than I am. And so I love those. I love those events. I love everything about them. I know good things happen and and come out of them. And so I just wanted to bring that back up because he actually speaks about that in his book as well too. So get in the rooms. Thank you again, Micah, Jag, for spearheading that, putting on such a great event. But without further ado, Becky, we've got Becky Meyer on our mastermind call today. And in a world where it's very difficult to buy a home and even more difficult for first-time home buyers to buy a home because of where home prices specifically in Canada and then more specifically in Ontario have gone, it's very difficult to afford a property. And so we need to figure out and create opportunities for our prospective clients. We need to figure out every angle we can take to help them out to get to the finish line or maybe even to the starting line. And so she's going to dive into a little bit more about how we can get creative in terms of utilizing some things. So Becky, thank you again for jumping on today. We appreciate your time. We know it's super valuable, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say so we can in turn take that back to our clients.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Bryn. And thanks for the opportunity to connect with you guys. As you guys are probably aware, the government introduced a new registered savings account to help Canadians start saving for homes. As you mentioned, that it's been really challenging for people to get into the market, right? So finding ways to initiate not only that savings, but opportunities to, create savings tax-free is always a great opportunity. So what I'm going to do is just share a little bit about the First Home Savers account, what it's all about, who would qualify, different scenarios, just to really help educate you guys on how to best serve your clients, right? Okay, let me just share my screen here. Perfect. Hopefully everybody can see it now. Okay, here we are. So First Home Savers account. So I'll just start off by just sharing a little bit about who I am. So I'm a financial advisor with Cooperators. I do specialize in helping clients specifically with insurance and investment planning, such as home savers accounts, TFSAs, RSPs, that type of thing. I also assist clients with commercial and business insurance planning. I reside in Guelph. You guys are probably well aware my husband is Andrew Meyer here, and we have a 3-year-old son, Tucker. So big question, what is the First Home Savers account? So as mentioned, it's a registered savings plan just specifically for Canadians. You do need to be 18 years or older to be able to participate. So this is, again, a good opportunity for Canadians to initiate that down payment. So how much can you contribute? So contributions do vary. Right now, they are at $8,000 a year contributions. A person can set this up by doing reoccurring payments, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or lump sums. At this time, it is $8,000, similar to the TFSA It does vary. There is a chance that it could vary, but at this time, it's $8,000 yearly contribution to a maximum of $40,000 of a lifetime contribution. So that contribution room can carry forward. So if you don't put in the $8,000 every year, a client is eligible to put in any rollover contributions from the previous year. Now, how this is a little bit different from a TFSA. TFSA, your rollover contribution initiates as soon as you turn 18, not once you've started the account. Where the First Home Savers account, you need to initiate, you need to open the account in order for rollover contributions to occur. So what that means is if you turn 18, it doesn't mean you automatically have that contribution limit initiated. It's once you start the account. Okay. So the big question is, who can qualify? So I'll go through a few scenarios on different qualifications, mainly for the reason is that it's not as straightforward as a brand new home buyer, right? So it can be someone who has never purchased a home before, or it can be somebody who hasn't purchased a home in the past 4 calendar years as well too. So there are a few different scenarios and we'll go through them together. What I would encourage you guys to do is if you have any questions, just kind of save them to the end, specifically around who's eligible. There might be some examples that pop into your mind of current clients that you're kind of nurturing relationships with as they're saving for that down payment. So we have scenario 1. So we've got Doug, he's 24 years old. So he's kind of your straightforward, never been a home buyer. He's contributing $8,000 per year to the max of $40,000. So with Doug, after about 6 years, he says he's going to buy a home. He's working with a real estate agent. He decides to draw all the funds. So it would be that $40,000 plus any investment growth. And he puts that towards his first home purchase. Okay. Then we go to scenario 2. So we have Martha, who's an 80-year-old grandparent, and her granddaughter, Maddie, 25, doesn't own a home. So Maddie opens up a First Home Savers account. And let's say at Christmas time, Martha, the grandmother, gives Maddie $8,000 as a Christmas gift every single year. And Maddie puts that money into her First Home Savers account. With the TFSA, it has similarities as a TFSA where you can contribute gifted money, whereas with an RSP, you cannot contribute gifted money. The concept of the RSP is only investing earned income, okay, with the exception of a spousal RSP. But essentially, TFSA and First Home Savers account, you can be gifted money. So if a parent or a grandparent wants to help the child or grandchild save for a home, they can gift the money and that can go towards the First Home Savers account. Okay. So again, after say 7 years, Maddie draws the money from her First Home Savers account and she puts it towards that first home purchase. So now we have scenario 3, and this is where it gets a little unique. And you may come across this whether somebody's purchasing a home, going through a divorce, that type of thing. So we have Ed, he's age 60. He's been divorced for about 5 years and he's renting. Ed has no intention on ever buying a house at all. So at this point in his life, perhaps he's traveling, he's not buying a home, and he's just going to be a renter in that sense. Ed, because he hasn't lived in an own principal residence for 4 or more years, he's eligible to open up a First Home Savers account and start contributing. So Ed opens that. Now, the First Home Savers account has tax deductibility similar to an RSP. So Ed gets to contribute to a First Home Savers account and he gets to contribute to his RSP and receive tax deductions on both of these accounts. Later on, he can take that First Home Savers account before he's age 71 and he can roll it over to his RSPs and it does not affect contribution. Okay? So again, if you're talking with someone who maybe downsizing, going through a divorce, that type of thing, this is something that would be eligible to them after that 4-year mark. Now we have scenario number 4. So Maria, age 45. Maria is a real estate investor. So she owns 3 properties and she rents them out to other people, right? The property she lives in, she does not own. She rents herself. So Maria is not a first-time home buyer on a principal residence. Okay, so this means she would qualify to open up a first home savers account. So again, for real estate investors, this is still an eligible investment option for them.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah, so at this point too, she can take that first home savers account and she can roll it over to an RSP. Okay, so in this scenario, she can't necessarily use it for a down payment, but she is able to use it as an investment, get tax deductions, and from a qualification standpoint, she's eligible to have the account. Our last scenario, we have a couple, Alex and Max. So Alex owns a home, Max does not. Alex and Max are engaged, however, they don't live together, okay? So because Max does not own a home, Max doesn't live in a matrimonial home, Max is eligible to open up that first home savers account, okay? Once Max is married, and if Max waited until she was married or he was married and he was living with Alex, then wouldn't be eligible. However, if the account is opened up before they are married, they would be eligible. Now, it is a little bit different with common law because in common law, typically you do not have rights to property unless you're married. So even if you're living together, and you might have one partner who owns a home and another partner who has never owned a home. If they are common law, the partner who has never owned a home is eligible for a first home savers account. Okay. So again, these are a few different scenarios, and this is something you guys may come across, right? So whether it's a real estate investor just looking for different opportunities to kind of, have tax deductible money, new home buyer, somebody who's downsizing, going through a divorce. There's options that they're all eligible in different capacities. So a question I do get asked on a regular basis with the first home savers account is, can you have a TFSA and an RSP at the same time? And can you use all 3 of them for doing a down payment? And the answer is yes. So with the first home savers account, you can have that as well as your TFSA and your RSP, and you can use that for your down payment. With your RSP, there is the home buyers plan that will allow you to withdraw up to $35,000, and it is not taxed. The caveat there is you will have to repay that $35,000 within 15 years, okay? You can draw more out of your RSP if needed. You're just taxed on that amount. So again, depending on the situation, depending on the person, where their tax liability is, it may not be a bad idea to draw more money out of their RSP for that property. However, if you look at the first home savers account, the TFSA and the RSP, you can come up with a pretty good down payment throughout all of them. Okay. With your TFSA, you can you don't have to be just a first home saver, first home buyer. You can put it towards any purchase at all. So again, if you're on your 3rd property and each of them have been principal residents, as you're moving along, you can still use your TFSA money for those purchases. So as I kind of alluded to before, your first home savers contributions are tax deductible. So that means you can claim it on the contributions on your tax return, and it either reduces tax owing or provides you with a tax refund. So very similar to your first home savers account. If somebody had a first home savers account and they rolled it over to an RSP, they do not receive an additional tax deduction. So this chart here just does a brief comparison of RSP, Home Buyers Plan, TFSA, and the First Home Savers Account. So as mentioned, contributions are tax deductible for First Home Savers and the RSP, not for your TFSA. Withdrawals are non-taxable for all three of them. The annual contribution is only tied to income on your RSP. So how much you're eligible is only based on the RSP. It's set for the First Home Savers and the TFSA, regardless of income amount. Accounts can hold selected investments. So all three of them, whatever financial institution they decide to invest in, they all can be in any type of investment, mutual funds, GICs, high interest savings accounts, that type of thing. Contribution rooms carry forward on all three of them. Basically, the First Home Savers and the RSP is only exclusive to first-time buyers or who would be eligible on a first-time buyer. Contribution limit. So not just looking at the annual, but on the total limit, but also looking at the annual. So with the First Home Savers and the TFSA, it can vary year by year. The RSP is set at the $35,000. So a question is, you might come across, if somebody opens up that First Home Savers account and they have the intent on buying a home, life sends them some curveballs, maybe they're traveling abroad, what can they do? Well, they can roll it into an RSP, and then again, it just keeps it tax sheltered, or they can just withdraw the money and they just pay the tax on it. So a few things, how does this help you? Well, it allows you guys as real estate agents to help educate your buyers, right? The more you know about ways to help support these clients on saving while you're nurturing those relationships will allow them to, work towards that goal and allow you guys to keep that relationship, right? So instead of just saying, well, no, you don't have a down payment, can't really help you now, at least this way you guys can connect and develop a plan for them. I also encourage you guys to collaborate with professionals, right? So financial advisors, mortgage brokers, that type of thing. Find ways to create a synergetic relationship for your clients, right? Create that team. Not only do you look like that professional that is guiding them towards this really big step in their life, but they're going to come to you and they're going to think of you first for all aspects when it comes to, real estate or referrals or that type of thing. It's always about building that network. And that's pretty much everything. So any questions anybody's got out there?
I think what I'm seeing is what I have found anyways in the past and currently is there's certainly a lot of people that have a decent income, but they have trouble saving for a down payment. So that would help with that, or they have a down payment. It's not that sizable, and this would help top that down payment up. Just confirming, like, that would be kind of the two major financial benefits here, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, a lot of people may have the income, but they don't have a plan for saving. And that's where, I really encourage develop a team of professionals to support your client, right? It's only going to be beneficial for them in the long run.
Yeah. So in many cases, obviously, everybody wants that immediate gratification from what they're doing in this business. It sometimes becomes very transactional, and this is just a really good way to add value, build long-term relationships in this long-term business. Because obviously, so one of the questions Spencer asked, I believe I know the answer, but I'll let you do that. So can you contribute $40K in 1 year when you open the account? I believe it's 8 per year, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So no, it's only a max of 8 per year, and collectively 40,000 for the lifetime.
Cool. And then can gifted money towards the FHSA account be tax deductible for the person gifting the money to the account?
No, it would be tax deductible to the person owning the account.
Owning the account, okay. For common law spouse who does not own, are they eligible to use this as a down payment or only to roll into RSP?
Common law spouse can use it as a down payment.
Okay.
Yeah. So, or they can roll it into an RSP. But if you have a couple who will only be common law and the person who doesn't own the home opens the first home savers account and just keeps it in place, and let's say they separate, they then can use it to purchase a home.
Okay. That's helpful. So anybody have any other questions? Looks like another one possible. Oh, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Becky and Brandon. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? That's super helpful. Honestly, I didn't really know what the first savers account was, so that's very, very helpful. I think of it as like, being a dad for sure, thinking obviously Leo's far from 18, but something to consider for the future, for sure. So that's good to have. Anybody have any questions?
I have one more question.
Yes, hit us with it.
So with regards to, sorry if I'm breaking up, I can type it out, but with regards to investors, that's super surprising. So I just want to make sure that I can clearly understand that. If they own rental properties that they have not moved into for the last 4 years, and they currently rent and do not own their own principal residence, they're eligible to open an account and contribute $8,000 per year up to $40K, but they're not eligible to roll that into a down payment. It can only go towards their RSP accounts.
So the only way they'd be able to put it towards a down payment is if they're purchasing a principal resident. So if they're purchasing another investment property that they won't live in, they cannot use it for that. They're eligible to open it up. And if they choose to stop renting and purchase a principal residence, which I believe, you only have to live there for a period of time. I believe it's 1 year. Then yes, they can do that. And then if they rent to kind of work, we'll say the system. And then if they live in that principal residence for a year, and then they move out and rent it, and they go back to renting for 4 years, then they re-qualify for the first home savers account again.
So you can,
this is only for your principal residence.
So yes, first home savers account can only be put towards a down payment for principal residence.
Perfect.
So if you're buying a duplex and you're going to live in one unit, you can still use it, right? If you're doing that strategy.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
If I was buying a property and I told the government I was going to live in it, but maybe I wasn't, could I still take the money out?
That's between you and the government, but technically, yes.
Well, that's a good question. And that's awesome. Thanks for clarifying that, Andrew. How did they come up with like the number, the 40,000? And I'm just curious if you have any idea about that. Like it's you could look at it two ways, right? Like it's substantial or not. And so I'm just curious how they came up with like, this is the amount that we're deciding on, the maximum rent.
It's really just an arbitrary number. It's the same as the home buyer's plan, right? And, from my understanding, they recognize that like down payments, the cost of homes has been exponentially growing and growing. Therefore, the down payment, even just to get into the market, has been growing as well. For whatever reason, they chose not to, and perhaps from a repayment perspective, they chose not to extend the home buyer's plan on the RSP. They just chose to create a whole new vehicle, right? Because with the home buyer's plan on the RSP, if they were to extend that, let's say to, you can withdraw 50,000. The risk is you still have to now recontribute 50,000 within that, period of time, that 15 years, which could be a little bit challenging. So with the first home savers account, you are not required to repay that back like the RSP home buyers plan. So I think it was just another tool, but to go to your question, I truly believe it's just an arbitrary number that was selected.
But that's definitely one of the big differentials there is that between that and the RSP is you don't have to pay it back. That's great. Love that.
is there any way? So whoever has the home savers account, they're the one always getting the tax deduction. So if you gift somebody money,
Correct.
you're still paying that gift is still after tax dollars, right?
Right.
So if I give my son money for the first time home savers account, he gets a tax deduction. I do not.
Correct.
If he's not working because he's a student,
Mhm.
is it even worth putting it in that account? Or am I better just to put it in a TFSA or something else? Because there's no income deduction.
Well, it depends. So yeah, that's a good question. So if they don't have, you could look at splitting it up because rollover contributions don't commence until the account is set up. So that's the difference between a TFSA and the first home savers account. So probably in that situation, what I would probably recommend to the person, because it is tax deductible, is if they don't have a TFSA, perhaps to initiate that first home savers account just to get it open and to have that rollover contribution, you can put $100 in there and put the remaining amount in a TFSA. That way you at least initiate it and you can have that rollover contribution for maybe the next year when they do start working.
So there's also an RESP that I don't know, like the kids and teenagers get. Is there any way that can also be leveraged towards that down payment?
So that is technically yes. Okay. So there are a lot of ways to kind of leverage down payments, right? So keep in mind with an RSP, somebody does not have to be 18. They just need to be employed. So if your 13-year-old child starts working, then it makes sense for them to start putting money towards their RSP, right? Tax deduction maybe isn't much, but it's the accumulation for that. For the RESP, the child only has to be enrolled in school to be eligible to draw the money out. Okay. So, for example, let's say two parents have contributed the max to the RESP, right? And they've got about $90,000 in there for their child. And their child chooses to do an apprenticeship, which, maybe in 2 years, and it doesn't cost nearly that $90,000 that's needed. Because that child is technically enrolled in school, they can pull that money out, let's say in 2 chunks over the course of the year and put that towards a down payment. There's no tracking as to where the money goes. It can go towards living expenses, whatever's needed. They just need to show proof of enrollment. So yeah, the RESP as well, the government doesn't want you to use it for that, but technically you can use it towards a down payment for a home. It is taxable, and that money is taxable to the child. So ideally, if they're not working, that's really the best scenario, or if they're working very minimal.
What are the limits then to an RESP? Is there an upper limit of what you can put in there?
There is 50,000, and that's 50,000 lifetime amount, not including growth. So again, if you have a child, I always recommend starting the RESP early. Even if you max out that 50,000 earlier on, you have the compound time horizon for growth. So it's better to front load it than back load it.
So hypothetically, we have 50,000, 40,000, 35,000 across all 3 accounts that could be leveraged somehow.
Correct. Yeah. And keep in mind, let's say you don't need as much for school and somebody invested that RESP earlier on, that RESP could be worth like somewhere between $80,000 to $100,000.
So scenario here, you have a kid that's going to, they're doing an apprenticeship, they're doing a trade. So they're going to have a working portion, a school portion, a working portion, and a school portion. Let's say there's $50,000 in the RESP. Tuition is going to cost $20,000. I'm still able to draw out all 50.
Correct.
So I can roll that $30,000 balance maybe into the home savers at that point for the so when they're working, we could roll some of the money into there for the tax deduction. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah. So essentially, there's a lot of ways you can be strategic. So in that scenario, somebody is in school, they have $50,000, $20,000 required for school. You don't have to show proof of fund allocation, just proof of school enrollment. So if they were to pull that money out, they could, for example, put it all in their TFSA and then allocate to the First Home Savers account or to the RSP as needed to manage tax deduction. And then that helps them overall for return of tax and as well as down payment on their home. So the key here is, as Andrew's bringing up all these different scenarios, rope in a professional, right? Especially even when you start talking to, let's say, people who are in their retiree stage, they maybe have children that are in school or going to be going to school soon. Rope in professionals, give a little bit of feedback on, do you know that there's a lot of different ways that your child can get into the market? You guys know all the stats on the investment opportunity of owning property. So combining that with different resources that they have, a lot of people don't realize that you can be strategic on these things. So I encourage you, rope in professionals and just help everyone, help your clients get where they need to be.
Can you go back over maybe like a little workflow on how you could help somebody that's in that retirement era? You kind of mentioned that maybe downsizing, like how can they leverage this account? And I can't remember if you said that they could put that again towards the down payment or roll that into their RRSPs. So just if you could throw that in.
Yeah, for sure, Spencer. So let's say you have a couple that sells their house, they're going early retirement, right? Because keep in mind, you can only keep this account until age 71. A couple downsizes, early retirement, they're renting a condo here, they're renting a condo in Florida, going back and forth. After 4 years of renting, they are eligible to start investing in the First Home Savers account. At that point, they can either use it as a down payment towards a new home. So let's say they, after traveling back and forth, they're doing this traveling for like 7-8 years, they've maxed out their home savers account. They can use that money to either A, purchase, say, a new condo, or B, they can roll it into their RSP.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, and it's not as simple as just somebody who's never owned a home. It's under age 71, either never owned a home or hasn't lived in a principal-owned residence for 4 or more years.
Yeah, so you could find somebody that's like coming up to 60 and they're looking at maybe going to Florida or something like you said. And then this is a conversation where it's like, well, you can bounce back and forth for the next couple of years. After 4 years, you can open an account and then, you can technically max that out before the age of 71. You kind of might as well do that just in case, because you can roll it into an RFP if you want, or if you feel like it, you can buy another home. Who knows what you're going to do at that point? But yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and they're already contributing to their RSPs. They're getting double tax deduction between the First Home Savers account and the RSP. Even if they never intend on buying another house again, it's a great opportunity to mitigate tax, because I think most people would agree that they don't want to pay the government more taxes than they have to. And it also gives them some flexibility in case they want to buy another property. And if it happens that they don't want to buy another property, that's no problem at all. They roll it over and it doesn't affect their RSP contribution. Broom.
Now, is there a scenario where maybe they do end up buying a home and, maybe their health deteriorates, the next year or something like that, and then the home either gets inherited by somebody else or is sold? Is there any obligation to pay any of that money back due to the amount of time that they spent there after purchasing?
No, there isn't.
how much work is put into determining whether or not I can open up an account or I qualify? So, from my understanding, if I was divorced and then I sold my house 4 years later, I could start up an account again. Or if I decided to sell my house and rent 4 years later, I could start up an account again. How do they know? How do they actually know that I've been renting for the last 4 years, or that I sold my house, or like, how do they know?
Yeah, the CRA would be privy to all the information. So when you buy and sell a home, they would be privy to that information. Same as when you open up registered investment accounts as well too. They would be privy to that information. So if you had sold your home, they would know because you would be deregistered from that ownership. So they would just go based on that time period. Now, flip side, let's say you have a couple where the home is only in the husband's, right? And the wife opened up that first home savers account just before they got married, before she lived there. She can keep that going, right? I had mentioned that before. So if they sold their home, then she can use that for a down payment, right?
So if they're still, I don't know, if they were still married, or if they were, I don't know if I don't know enough about divorce and how all that works, whether or not separation is technically a thing, whether or not you file for it or not. But I'm just, if you're on title and I'm not on title,
Mm-hmm.
can I in 4 years open one up if we take me off title?
Yes.
Okay.
Andrew, I think Becky's getting a little nervous now.
I know. I'm hoping somebody else would ask the question, but
So could you technically have
Sorry, go ahead.
could you technically have like a common law spouse that you open an account for, and then once it's maxed out, you could purchase with their name, and like you could just roll this over back and forth.
Yeah, so here's the thing is like because married couples have right to property and common law couples don't have right to property. Here's a scenario. Let's say you have two people who choose never to be married, right? And let's say one couple owns the house that they live in, or one person in the couple owns the house they live in, and the other person doesn't. They've never been married. That person, the other person that opened the first home savers account, they can now use that. That person can use that towards the next purchase on the property, and it would be in their name. Now they just have to prove that's a principal residence, but it gives you some flexibility, right? So there's a workaround. So you can be very strategic. So if that person purchases the new property and the other person who owned the other property then rents it and then moves into the new property, again, that's technically owned by the other one, and you just kind of go back and forth. Technically, you can do that.
When it comes to like, say we're having a conversation with a client and they are common law, when they ask what documentation needs to be provided to prove this sort of stuff, like should we just at that point be saying, listen, speak to a financial advisor, or how do we handle that?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend when it comes to kind of the strategies around using the first home savers account, whether it be common law or individuals, I definitely would recommend just connecting with a financial advisor, right? Because it could be as simple as just a phone call where everybody's looped in to understand, as we're discussing here, all the different strategies. The financial advisor can understand that client, the couple, the background, and best be able to give recommendations on how to use the first home savers account along with other ones, right? The first home buyers plan also has the same sort of concept where it has like the 4-year eligibility, that type of thing. So you could get strategic, and it's always better to rope in somebody who kind of does that on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, I'm gonna see how far we can get into the gray here. So I'm a beneficial owner of a corporation.
Mhm.
That corporation owns real estate.
Right.
Can I don't personally own real estate in my name. But I'm a part of a beneficial corporate. A beneficial owner through a corporation. Can I open up
Mhm.
an account if I haven't owned real estate in the last 4 years?
Yes.
So I can. So basically, my corporation would buy it. I would buy it, transfer it, or sell it to my corporation, and then buy a new one every 4 years and get $8,000 in tax deductions per year, up to 40K.
Yeah.
How long does this program last if we want to try to do something like that? Like you mentioned something about 15 years. Is that 15 years from the date you open the account, or?
No, so the 15 years was the RSP, the timeline that you have to pay that back. So keep in mind, this First Home Savers account is brand new. It just opened up last year. And just like anything else, if it gets used beyond the capacity of what the government would like, there's always a risk that there's going to be amendments. Okay. So everything that I'm sharing today is based on the information that we have today before anything is rolled out or changed, that type of thing, right? With the TFSA, for example, contribution limits vary every single year, right? And with the First Home Savers account, there is a chance, the communication that's come out is that there is a chance that it may vary as well too. At this time, we know that it's $8,000 per year, but again, that could change. So I would say another reason to rope in a professional, that they are required to stay up to date on this information. So each year that goes by, if there's any changes, instead of you guys necessarily having to know all the ins and outs, bring someone in. Or even if you want to stay relevant, grab coffee with a financial advisor on a regular basis. Find out different ways. If you are thinking of different strategies, like I always enjoy doing this. So if you want to connect for a call or a coffee, I'm always up for that. But connect with a financial advisor on a regular basis, know what's going on and how to best help your clients, not just with the First Home Savers account, but collectively with all the investment opportunities.
Well, I have one more question.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you cannot open an account and put in 1 month something like 40K, but if I open an account, put in $100, and then I don't make any payments for the next 2 years, can I then put in $17,900?
Everything rolls over. So if you did $100, then you would have 7,900, and then the next year you would have 8,000, and then if on year 3 you contributed, you would have collectively all that amount you could do as one lump sum that year.
Okay, cool.
And that's why I do recommend open it up as soon as someone is eligible, so that, and even if it's something as simple as $100, they just put in there to hold it. Now it rolls over. And if they're thinking, well, you know what? Grandma's going to be giving a living inheritance in 2 years. I know this is going to happen. Then go ahead, open up that account as soon as you can. And in 2 years, you can do a larger lump sum.
That's a great idea.
Okay, so I wrote it down so it was easier to see. So other than the the RRSP, the RESP, and all that other stuff, essentially the best way to work this, if we're trying to maximize what we could get, is that you get 40K every 10 years. You max out 8K over 5 years for your 40K, and you get the tax deductions and the tax-free savings. You use that to buy a home. You're going to have to sit in that home for probably 1 year, just because there's going to be legislation around how long it has to probably be a principal residence before you can then take yourself off title or transfer it to your, I have to talk to a lawyer about how to do that, transfer it to your corp. And then you have a 4-year waiting period because you don't own real estate again before you can do it again. So every 10 years, I can
buy a new property.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So again, for someone who wants to do personal real estate investing, it's kind of an opportunity to work on them. So again, it's very strategic, understanding that clients' objective for buying a home and what their long-term plans look like can help determine how to be best strategic for down payments going forward, right? So like Andrew calculated here, about every 10 years, you can buy a home and use the first home savers and the home buyer's plan towards it.
Brilliant.
Good questions, guys.
You can't do it till you're 18,
Correct.
or is it until you start working?
18. RSP is when you're working.
Yeah. Can I transfer? No, never mind. Forget it.
We'll have to grab a coffee and talk a little bit more.
Every way you can game the system.
Legally.
Again, like I said, if you don't have to pay taxes, why would you not?
Exactly.
How do we open an account? Is it as simple as going into the bank, or is it something we can do at the SCRO website?
Yeah, opening an account, any financial institution that offers them, right? So whether it's a bank, whether it's like an investment firm like I work in, that type of thing. Anywhere that is a financial institution should be offering them, and it's quite simple to set them up.
Will you be providing a slide deck? Okay.
The slide deck, sure. I'm happy to send it over. I'll send it to Brennan and he can distribute it out to you guys.
And we'll get into the group along with this recording, no problem.
Lots of great info on this one. Super awesome.
Yes. Lots of ways to help your clients and anyone for that matter. To be honest, it sounds like we've been covered some awesome ways to tax shelter some things too. So that's great.
I'm going to add something here that's more real estate, like realtor specific. Because it's normal, out of when I get leads that come in, like 25%, don't even have down payment or are just starting on the down payment phase. What's the best way to manage a handoff? Because if I have these leads that they're no good to me for at least 5 years so they can save up a down payment or do something. What's the best way to manage a handoff with them to someone like yourself?
Yeah, I would do an email introduction, right? So I always recommend having a financial advisor in your back pocket for situations such as this. And that's the financial advisor that works exclusively with you as well too, right? Create that kind of center of influence. I would say do an email introduction. That financial advisor should respond within 24 hours and set up a meeting. And if the client is comfortable, have that financial advisor kind of loop in on a regular basis, whether it be every 6 months or every year, to update the status on their progress towards that down payment for a home. And that just maintains that relationship between all three of you, right?
Love it. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? That was a great session. Thank you, Becky. We really appreciate that. Very knowledgeable, very valuable. Thanks everybody for showing up this week. We've got some good ones coming up for the month actually of February. So stay tuned for those. I'll get the recording in the group as always, and we will see you next week. We'll see you in a couple weeks actually. Thanks guys. Have a good week. Thanks, Becky.